Imagine waking up one day to discover that every human being on Earth has acquired a superpower. Not just a handful of individuals, but literally everyone. From your neighbor who can fly to your teacher who can read minds, the entire planet is now populated by people with extraordinary abilities. What would this new reality look like? How would society adapt to this overwhelming change? Would we see a utopia where everyone uses their powers for good, or would we face a dystopian nightmare where chaos reigns? The introduction of superpowers would not only alter individual lives but reshape entire nations, economies, and cultures. Our definition of normal would shift, as would our understanding of human potential. The biggest question is, how would we, as a species, cope with such a monumental shift in reality? Would we be able to maintain our humanity in a world full of gods and monsters? Stay with us as we dive into a world where everyone has superpowers. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What power would you want and how would you use it in your daily life? The idea of everyone having superpowers would completely upend the world's existing job market. Professions like law enforcement, medicine, and engineering would no longer be based solely on skill and knowledge but would hinge on one's superpowers. Imagine a doctor who can instantly heal wounds with a touch, or a police officer who can read minds to solve crimes. This could make traditional roles obsolete. Many people might find that their powers render their old jobs irrelevant. Imagine a world where physical laborers with super strength could perform jobs that once took hours in mere minutes, or where the need for factories and manual workers diminished due to telekinesis and shape-shifting abilities. However, this also leads to a significant question. What about people whose powers are seemingly useless? Would those who can only communicate with animals be left behind? As society places more emphasis on powers than skills, we might see an era of intense competition and social stratification. How would you feel about a job market that values superpowers over education or experience? Let us know your thoughts below. In a world where people have superpowers, the role of government and law enforcement would drastically change. Governments might be forced to implement strict registration laws for superpowered individuals, making sure they are monitored and their abilities are controlled. This could lead to the creation of elite superpowered law enforcement agencies, where only those with powers would have the authority to police others. The nature of crime would shift, as traditional methods of law enforcement would no longer be enough to stop those who can teleport, phase through walls, or manipulate minds. Society would likely be split into those with powers and those without, leading to potential civil unrest and inequality. Can a person with the ability to control emotions ever truly be trusted in a position of power? Could authorities use their powers for surveillance, violating privacy in unprecedented ways? The concept of justice would change entirely. Would there be fair trials if superpowered individuals could simply manipulate the outcome? The balance of power between citizens and the government would shift dramatically. Would society descend into authoritarian control, or would freedom and individual rights still hold sway? Comment below on how you think power dynamics would evolve. Superpowers would undoubtedly fuel a sharp rise in crime. Ordinary crimes like theft, vandalism, and assault would become much more dangerous when perpetrators could manipulate time, transform objects, or even control others' minds. Superpowered criminals would be more formidable than ever before. Imagine a bank robber who can phase through walls and steal from anywhere without being caught. Or a hacker who can control digital systems with the wave of a hand. This could lead to an arms race where criminals constantly find new ways to enhance their powers. The justice system would be overwhelmed, and the question of who can be trusted with such power would be central to every conversation. Vigilantism could rise as ordinary citizens with super abilities take matters into their own hands. Cities would become battlegrounds, where ordinary people are forced to protect themselves with their newfound powers. Would this chaotic world make society safer, or would it create a more dangerous and unstable environment? Let us know in the comments. How would you deal with a world where crime becomes superpowered? In a world where everyone has superpowers, the traditional education system would need to evolve in ways we can hardly imagine. Schools would no longer simply focus on math, science, and history. They would also teach students how to control their powers and use them responsibly. We could see institutions resembling modern-day superhero academies, where children are trained to harness their abilities. But what happens when a child with uncontrolled powers is placed in a classroom with other students? Some students might have destructive abilities like the power to control fire or manipulate the weather, which could pose a danger to everyone around them. Would there be special schools for the most dangerous children, or would the global system of education have to adapt universally? Ethical questions would arise as well. Would it be right to teach children to use their powers for personal gain, or should there be an emphasis on using them only for the greater good? Could there be a standard curriculum for superpowered individuals, or would each person have to find their own path? Imagine a world where students study the physics of teleportation or the ethics of mind reading. What subjects would you be most excited to learn about in this new reality? With the introduction of superpowers, the dynamics of social class could change in profound ways. In a world where some can control the weather and others can only change the color of objects, class distinctions would be heavily influenced by the power one holds. Society would likely develop a new form of classism, where those with the rarest and most powerful abilities are placed at the top. Super-rich individuals could use their powers to amass even more wealth and influence, creating a superpowered aristocracy. Meanwhile, those with less impressive powers, or none at all, might face discrimination or live in poverty. Imagine a world where people are judged by their abilities, not by their intelligence or hard work. Would the rich and powerful use their abilities to maintain their status? Or would society focus on creating an egalitarian world where everyone's abilities are valued equally? Could a person who has the ability to talk to animals ever truly rise to power in a world where someone else can bend steel? How would you feel about a society where social status is determined by the power you hold? Let us know in the comments below. The military world would be transformed if everyone had superpowers. Nations would rapidly develop superpowered military units to defend their borders and assert dominance. Imagine soldiers who can fly or entire armies that can control minds and force enemies to surrender. Countries would likely race to develop powers that counter the abilities of other nations, leading to a new type of arms race. A world where every soldier is a superpowered individual would see conflict escalate to a level never seen before. Smaller nations could gain significant leverage if they had citizens with particularly powerful abilities. The concept of diplomacy would also shift, as international treaties might involve negotiations between the most powerful superhumans, with threats of violence and destruction always looming. How would the world balance superpowered militaries without plunging into chaos? Would humanity's thirst for power lead to a global superpowered war? Comment below. How would the existence of superpowers change the balance of global power? Superpowers would not only transform society in terms of economics, politics, and conflict but would also shake the foundations of culture and identity. With so many people possessing extraordinary abilities, new religions could emerge that worship those with the most powerful abilities. The concept of the divine might be redefined, with certain individuals considered to be godlike, while others could be seen as cursed. The arts would also evolve as artists could use their powers to create impossible works. Sculptures made from light, paintings that come to life, or songs that can physically alter emotions. Sports would be forever changed, with leagues either banning superpowers or embracing them in full. But this could lead to new forms of competition where athletes use their powers to gain an unfair advantage. Social norms would change and beauty standards could shift entirely. What would our culture look like in a world where everyone has superpowers? Would the role of religion change if superpowers became a daily reality? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Having superpowers could profoundly affect an individual's sense of self. Imagine the psychological toll of having powers that you can't fully control, or the pressure to constantly use your abilities to help others. Superpowers could bring feelings of guilt, shame, or even a sense of superiority. People might struggle with mental health issues related to their powers. Someone who can manipulate emotions might feel responsible for the happiness, or misery, of others, leading to a heavy emotional burden. Similarly, people with destructive powers might feel alienated, constantly fearing that they could hurt someone unintentionally. There could also be a sense of isolation for those who are powerless, making them feel inferior or left out. The advent of superpowers would require a complete overhaul of mental health services to help individuals cope with their abilities. Therapy might focus on power control, dealing with the stress of constantly being on call, and learning how to live a normal life despite having godlike abilities. How would you navigate a world where your identity is intertwined with superhuman abilities? Ultimately, the question remains: if everyone had superpowers, would the benefits outweigh the costs?